that was Ernest Goes to Africa, and if there's anything that proves that it was a sequel to far, or that sequels to movies exist far beyond their sell by date, that's one of them. So, like I was saying at the beginning, we're starting this new series called, a sequel too far, where it really explores the movie franchises and universes and mythologies of different movies that go a little bit too far. They try to wring that chamois out and make as much money as possible, and it ends up in a place like Ernest Goes to Africa, which we just watched. So I think this is the perfect one to start with. Vince, I want before we get started about kind of our postscript on this, I want to read you some facts.
What you got?
Well, let me find it first.
Give me those facts.
Oh, dang it, I blew it. So the character of Ernest became wildly popular and was based for a short-lived TV series, Hey Vern, It's Ernest, 1988, and a series of movies in the 1980s and 90s. Ernest Goes to Camp grossed $23.5 million at the box office on a $3.5 million budget and stayed in the box office top 5 for its first 3 weeks of release. Though Varney was nominated, Jim Varney, the name of the actor who played Ernest, though Varney was nominated for the Razzie Award for Worst New Show, only 1 year later, he earned the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Performer in a Children's Series for Hey Vern, It's Ernest. Subsequently, theatrically released Ernest films include Ernest Saves Christmas, Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Scared Stupid, and Ernest Rides Again. After the financial failure of Ernest Rides Again, all further films were released direct-to-video. Ernest Goes to School, which had a limited theatrical run in Ohio and Kentucky, Slam Dunk Ernest, Ernest Goes to Africa, and Ernest in the Army. So, uh, man, it really makes sense that this movie was kind of after the heyday of Ernest. And what did you think of this movie in the long run?
It was so boring, dude. It was so boring you could tell that they didn't have any budget, which is probably a reason why you shouldn't make this movie. But they did anyways. We found out through watching it. We thought they maybe did it in Pasadena, but we looked it up and they actually went to Africa for this, which is wild.
It probably means that to shoot in Johannesburg was cheaper than shooting somewhere over here. But with these movies, and this is kind of why I wanted to do this series, because it's interesting to see kind of again, Ernest was a big character. Ernest, $23 million off a $3 million budget.
Yeah, I was surprised.
It's a lot of money. And so, Jim Varney did a bunch of different stuff. He did the Beverly Hillbillies movie. He went on to do the Toy Story movies, and he's all over the place, in the 80s, 90s, and a little bit in the early 2000s. But man, it's kind of sad watching a movie like this at the same time, because although it's interesting and funny to watch a movie that's way past its prime, or a franchise that's way past its prime, this is the kind of thing that you just you're sad, right? Because this guy creates a character. The character, kind of skyrockets and becomes relevant for a while. And they just keep going back to that well. And this movie really shows it. I mean, to call it a movie, I think is kind of, being nice. To be nice.
I don't even know what to say, dude. It was you named off a few of those other movies which I've never even heard. Was there Slam Dunk Ernest?
Yeah, that's another one that was straight to DVD. So it's another pick and say bargain bin movie.
Dude,
it looks like there was about 4 of those.
So my question is, this is a sequel too far. This is like a sequel way too far. Where do you think, just based off the box office, they have the numbers, but which one do you think was the first one that fell off? Because this is so bad. And I'm a fan of the other movies.
I've never seen, according to this, it was the movie that's Ernest Rides Again. I've never seen that movie either, so I don't really know the quality of, whatever. There's people listening to this going dude, the quality of an Ernest movie, but, you can tell.
Yeah.
The thing about the Ernest movies is, they had their own kind of sense of humor, It was drawing from a lot, it's almost like a silent film type character, even though they're talking and he's making jokes. But the jokes are so vaudeville-y and they're so old and in reference that they're almost new and relevant, for the time in the 80s.
Yeah.
But these movies are just void of any of that.
They're also void. I don't know if you feel this way, but I just watched Scared Straight, and I've seen the Christmas one. Those had heart to them, and at least they had some sort of message, where he was showing that he plays this character of Ernest, but Ernest is pretty much a child. But in all of those movies, they make it seem as if like he may be an adult, like acting like a child, but he still has like the same affection and love that only a child has for like certain things and for like friendship and for taking care of one another. This had no message at all.
No.
This had nothing to it. It didn't make sense why he went to Africa. It didn't make sense that they didn't kill him the second he got to Africa.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of ends, and then it completely just dissolves the kind of relationship that he was building throughout this entire movie.
Yeah, no, so for sure. And like I said,
stage one again.
Jim Varney is like the Shakespearean actor. So I think like Jim Varney's like the characters and stuff he's doing, the character of Ernest, you know, he is a talented dude and he is a good performer, and that comes across in those other movies. But you also had the benefit of big studios that were making those movies. So I know like my favorite one is Ernest Saves Christmas.
Oh yeah.
And that one was Touchstone. So I don't know at the time if they were owned by Disney, but for a while, and they were, I think they're still around. I think they're still doing movies under the Touchstone label, but that was one of the studio production houses that Disney created in the 80s to do more adult movies. So you had the benefit of, you know, a budget, and, you know, I'm sure this movie cost, man, who knows, but it didn't cost very much money. So I think you lose some of that. There's no style or real, like, you know, for as much as you can, it's an Ernest movie, they're still trying to make a movie. This one is like, well, let's put the character out there on the front of a DVD or a VHS box, because that'll get people to buy it, especially during this time when the home video market was huge, you know?
Yeah, this is just a cash grab, I guess. It just, I was hoping for something more, dude. I was hoping for more of the wacky characters.
I wasn't. This is exactly what I was hoping for.
It was so slow.
Well, you know, some of the, like we talked about, and you know, go back on Twitch and watch the watch along, but we had a insensitivity counter, because I kind of anticipated with this one, with a, you know, a lily white guy like Ernest going to Africa in the 90s. I knew it wasn't going to be, you know, void of some non-politically correct jokes.
Yeah.
And boy, were there some non-politically correct jokes in there. And it's interesting to watch stuff like this from the lens of 2023, you know, and it makes sense why it's, you know, it's fallen out, and you can watch it on YouTube now.
Yeah, dude. And I think there's even a part where they reference that they're just two white people in a golf cart in the middle of Africa, and I'm just like,
yeah,
what the fuck am I watching, dude?
Yeah, there's some jokes in there that don't necessarily land, but so much of this, the quote unquote comedy of this, you can tell is derived from other things. You know, there's so many things that they're trying to hit the Three Stooges level, you know, comedic, like the whole like dude falling for one of the Stooges that's in drag. That's what Curly used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
and that's like a comedy trope, so that's been around forever.
Which was the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed watching this. I thought it was stupid and silly and, you know, anachronistic in a lot of ways, but it is interesting to see, you know, how the mighty have fallen, so to speak. And of course, Jim Varney passed away a long time ago, back in 2000. But man, it's a bummer that it came to this with the Ernest character. My question for you, Vinny, is: do you think if Jim Varney was still alive today, would there have been another Ernest movie? Do you think that Ernest
100%.
would have found resurgence like some of these old franchises or some of these old? I mean, Pee-wee got a movie in 2016, which was 30 years after Big Adventure.
That's true.
Would the same fate have fallen upon Jim Varney and Ernest P. Worrell?
I could see Netflix throwing money at anything, dude. I could see them throwing money at maybe even like Hulu, because they would be like, "Oh, you got Pee-wee? We have Ernest." Like I don't know. I feel like if Ernest was still alive, he would probably make a lot of money just touring conventions.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he'd make so much money, dude.
100%.
100%. And social media, I imagine this dude would probably be pretty damn good at it, because he's wacky.
And I think his time would have gone on maybe too. You would have seen him do stuff, you know, because if you watch Beverly Hillbillies, he's a completely different person.
Which I want to see now, because I didn't realize he was in that.
So that's some of the, you know, the great thing about comedic actors is their ability to make a character that's so good that people can't separate the character and the actor. Ernest is definitely that, you know, and so man, I mean, we'll never know, but the real question is how long until Gen Z finds Ernest, because that's when.
Hopefully they don't find this specific movie, because I don't think it's going to go well.
Yeah, maybe not.
Before we go out, What are like? Well, give me two or three dream Ernest movies you wish you could see in this day and age. Like
I would love. Go ahead.
AI has there's a new AI option where you can
Yeah,
type in the movie of your choice and it pops out a 10-minute little
new
clip,
Ernest
dude.
short.
A new Ernest movie. What is it?
I would love to see, and we kind of joked about it, and I was going to get to this too, but my favorite part of watching that was some of the alt Ernest movies that we could have made in some of our pitches. One of them was, you had the best one, which was Ernest Goes to Hell, which I think like writes itself. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
I think when her, Ernest has to kind of, because the Ernest movies kind of work out a lot of the times to be like almost like road trip, ensemble movies. So you would have the and I'm sorry, my voice goes hoarse now whenever it's past 9 o'clock. So, but you could have Ernest playing the devil character. You could have Ernest.
Ernest plays every character, dude.
Every character.
That
and
is
it's
hell.
Dude. Oh my god, I love that. See, to answer your question. That's what I was gonna say. I would love to see an Ernest Goes Dark movie.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like you have this 30 or 40 years of history of the Ernest character, and he's this like, oh, you know what I mean, Vern? And he's this bumbling idiot. It just falls through life and somehow ends up on top at the end of everything. I would love to see him snap, or I would love to see him have a movie where it's almost like did you ever see the movie with Michael Keaton, Birdman?
Birdman. I was
Where it's
imagining
like that.
Dude, what's the Michael Douglas movie? That's what I thought you
Falling
were going to
down.
bring up. Dude,
Falling
Ernest
down.
falls down and he just fucking cracks and starts shooting people in East LA.
That would be great. Another great idea would be to do like an Inside John Malkovich, or was that the name of it? Being John Malkovich.
Yeah.
Do that, but do it with Ernest.
Being
so all of
Ernest
the characters
P. World or whatever.
Dude, yeah. Being Ernest. Being Ernest, and it's like a play on, the word earnest.
Yeah.
But much like your Ernest Goes to Hell idea, you could really follow Ernest as he's all these voices in his head. It's like, did you ever read the Moon Knight series that Warren Ellis did?
Oh yeah, it was fantastic, dude. The art was so good. Sorry.
Yeah, and Moon Knight thought that he had Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Captain America in his head, telling him how to be the perfect Avenger.
Yeah.
So something like that, but with Ernest. I would love that. What about you? What would you like to see Ernest do?
I think when we were watching it, I came up with Ernest stops Big Oil or whatever. And just the concept of like Ernest falling in love and going to like France, and then the whole movie is that he super glues himself to the museum wall or a painting or whatever, but he does it in a part of a museum where like
he's all, ooh.
They do it in a part of a museum where they already kind of closed down for the night, so it's just him stuck on a wall for the weekend. I think it'd be funny, dude.
I mean, that would be one sequence.
And he kind of like freaks out and sees his other characters like in paintings. So like one of the paintings is Grandma Ernest. In my mind, it's fantastic. But that would be my 10-minute AI skit.
Yeah, I love that all of our Ernest ideas go to him losing his mind in some capacity.
That's kind of what the character is, right?
I don't think so, but I think it could easily be that, because it's kind of that whimsical, like he's in his own world. His house in this last one was absurd and like kind of Pee-wee's Playhouse-esque. But yeah, I I think there's a lot of different Ernest movies you could do now with the, being Ernest P. Worrell, I think is the money though. I think just that meta acknowledging that he, and Jim Varney, the inner Shakespearean actor wanting to come out, and he's put his all into Ernest. So now the only way that he can see himself getting outside the Ernest character is to become all these other different characters. And you could have the grandma character, you could have the lawyer character from Ernest Saves Christmas. But I think you have you just let that guy, you let his true acting ability come out and just wreck shop.
Just a week of shoots of just, all right, what other characters you have? Dane, do you think that they made this a jump off of Cool Runnings or Coming to America craze? I feel like this had a lot of, it took from a lot of movies. I was saying Ace Ventura, Pee-wee, obviously. I could kind of see the Cool Runnings where it's like, oh, this guy doesn't really belong here. But then at least Cool Runnings, like he pulled it all together. This one, he didn't belong there. They shipped him back. Then his life was not any better. This is
I think Daner, I think this is definitely capitalizing on like kind of a Disney style comedy, which is where like the Ernest that was like the family, Disney comedy in the 80s. And I think this is like mimicking a lot of the stuff of the time, but just not well, and
Not well.
wasn't done successfully or with a budget, which makes, things admittedly harder. But there's an amalgamation here. We were talking about it earlier in the movie where it's like they're trying to pay homage to Indiana Jones. I think after looking into the trivia and finding out that this movie was shot in Johannesburg, I think they strictly just did this movie because they probably got a tax break in Africa that was insane that allowed them to
I can
make
see
it.
that.
Part of the trivia that I read said that the next one, which is Ernest joins the army, was shot right after. So I'm sure they went over there and just knocked them out back to back. Collect our check. Thank you very much.
Dude.
On to the next one. Back to that Toy Story 2 money. But no, I enjoyed watching this. You have anything else to say about Ernest Goes to Africa? I mean, what would you rate this?
Dude,
out of
this
5
is
stars?
Out of 5, I'm gonna go 10 because it's just an easier bracket. This is a fucking 2. Because if it was 5, I'd give it a 1. This is a rough movie, dude. It's not fun. There's parts that are funny, but I feel like I could have just watched that 6 minutes of clips on YouTube and gotten everything out of this movie that I would need.
You're really salty about this movie, dude. It's like normally you get down on the hate. I lovingly call it the hate watch, which is like watching a movie or something that's knowingly bad to laugh and to but not this one.
No, well, it's because it was slow. I love shitty movies. I love whenever they try and it's shitty. This they didn't try. It was slow. It was boring, dude. It was. Yeah, It was more than slightly racist.
I gotta give this one a 1.
Yeah.
I can't even give it a 2. It's just there's no actual plot, which is the base level of anything. I think like as far as brand withdrawal for the Ernest brand or the Ernest character, it's a brand withdrawal. They didn't get anything from this. If anything, they just watered down the legacy of Jim Varney. So that was kind of a bummer. I think, I'm going to start the tradition here at the end of a sequel too far. Vince, what would you have done if you had to do Ernest Goes to Africa? What movie would you have written and what movie would you have made?
Dude, I would have made, it would have been kind of like, what's the name? Like kind of like a Mr. Bean movie where he is just so consumed in his own brain that he's kind of like just a bumbling idiot that just happens to stumble into situations. I would have had him happen to stumble into a box that sent him to Africa and then him trying to figure out how to get home. I feel like you just have him play his characters. You don't worry about the story because it doesn't matter. They tried to make the story matter in here and failed drastically. So get rid of all that. Give me a 45-minute bumbling idiot Ernest movie in Africa, dude, and I'm in.
I'm going to go left of your idea. It's a worthy idea.
Thank you.
I'm going to go left of yours, and I talked a little bit about it on the stream. I'm going to make Ernest some kind of a guy that either works in the Peace Corps or he works for an organization that goes to Africa to help in some way, maybe to build wells, maybe to help with vaccines, maybe to help at a hospital. And you could still keep the bumbling idiot aspect, but I think he's more of like a Jar Jar Binks, where he's in a situation that isn't bumbling or to be laughed at or to make a joke, but that would heighten the comedy of Ernest because he shouldn't be. And it's like they could have the conversation of like, Ernest, we know that you have a good heart and you're trying, but we just like, this isn't meant for you. And he's like, oh, okay. And they want to send him back. But before he gets on a plane to go home from Africa, something happens to the plane. He has to save the head of the organization who gets kidnapped or something along the lines. And he's got to go on a selfless journey and risk his own life to save someone. And in the end, Ernest Goes to Africa. All right. I think that'll do it for us this week. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for hanging out, Vince. Sorry the movie was so bad, but I think we got some funny stuff out of it.
Yeah, dude. And if anything, I can cross that off my list to never see again, dude.
And if you're watching this and you want to suggest a movie that's a sequel, it's gone a little bit too far, that we can just say enough already, put it in the chat. You can't put Quantumania, okay? I know you want to, but we're going to hold off on like the big movies. Think more along the lines of something like, one of the ideas I had was like Jingle All the Way 2. Christmas is coming up.
Dude.
Maybe we do that one. Maybe we do a Christmas Story 2, Christmas Vacation 2.
I just thought of a perfect sequel too far. What about The Brave Little Toaster Goes to Space?
Done.
Talk about a movie that did not have to be.
No. And there's a whole genre, I think, of movies that didn't
There's
have
a lot,
to be.
dude.
And that's where we're at. So thanks for sticking around. Make sure to check out our stuff on YouTube. Make sure to check out Dave Penner and I's podcast, Skipping Through the End Times, on Spotify, on Apple. We're working on a new season. We're writing sketches. We're going to get in there. Babies or not, we're going to get in there, and we've got some cool things coming up. So stick around. Give us a like, subscribe, follow us on Twitch. And Vince, thanks for joining me, man.